Martin, and welcome to this 10 easy ways to improve series. Whatever your level, you're going to find tips here that are going to make you a much stronger chess player. Welcome to DVD2. Now, obviously at this stage, I'm supposing that you've mastered the basics, and now you're moving on and you want to become a better player. So my first tip for you on this second DVD is to always think about your pawn structure. It's my perception that a lot of improving players in chess don't necessarily consider their pawn structure as carefully as they might do. For instance, it's well-charted advice that newcomers to the game should learn how to attack. They should learn how to sacrifice, develop their pieces quickly, get onto the attack, etc., etc. But as you become more sophisticated and you become stronger, you simply can't batter a strong opponent to death. So you've got to use other, more subtle methods to win the game. One way, which is actually quite effective for many grandmasters use, is simply to try and set up a superior pawn structure right at the outset of the game, and to somehow nurture this advantage throughout the game to a win. Let me just try and illustrate what I mean now, as we pick up a game from Monte Carlo in 2007 between two very strong players, Timur Radjabov playing with white, super grandmaster, and Peter Leko playing with black. And it's a particularly interesting example of an opening called the Nimzo-Indian defence. Some of you might already know this opening. It's a very reliable defence for black, very coherent, very logical. Black gets all the pieces out quickly. He pins the white knight on c3. He threatens to double the pawns on c3, and he's also getting ready to castle. Moreover, black has loads of choices with his pawns in this particular position. All of his pawns, could literally go the third or the fourth rank. So, all things considered, this is a pretty reliable way of playing for black. And in this particular game, Radjabov plays the invitational move and also very confrontational move, a3, allowing black to double the pawns. Now, I should repeat, pawn structure is incredibly important. So why does Radjabov voluntarily allow Leko to double his pawns at this early stage? He must know that this could be a weakness which might cost him the game in the long run. Well, it's true, if you take all the pieces off in this position, then black probably has a one king and pawn ending, simply because white's got these horrible doubled c-pawns, and he's also got an isolated pawn on a3 to boot. So already black has by far the more superior pawn structure. Well, he's doing it, Radjabov, because he's got two nice bishops. In particular, the bishop on c1, the dark square bishop, is a piece which actually white can't contest. Moreover, white has what we call a mobile pawn centre. If he can somehow get his f-pawn and his e-pawn going early, then he could overwhelm black before black even gets the chance to utilise this advantage of the better pawn structure. There are always trade-offs in a game of chess. You might get the better pawn structure early on, but probably the opponent has got something in return. I think what I'm saying here is that you should be very reluctant to accept a weakness in your pawn structure unless you've got good compensation for it. Please realise that. A decent opponent is going to be able to take advantage of weaknesses in your position. Please don't weaken your position without a clear reason for doing so. Well, now black plays c5. That's a blockading move. Basically, black is calling a halt to any advance of the pawns. He's hoping in particular to gang up on this pawn at c4 and win it. That pawn on c4 can't be defended by any of his own pawns, so he's basically an isolated pawn, in a sense. The loss of the c-pawn has been responsible for many excellent black victories in this line. So we're waiting to see what Radjabov has in mind. Well, he quickly reveals what he's got in mind as he gets his pieces out. Note the development of the knight to e2, leaving the f-pawn free for action a little bit later on. Obviously, white could play a move like knight f3 here. That move has been tried, but it's not very frequent at grandmaster level because it blocks the pawn on f2 and takes a lot of dynamic energy out of white's position. And now black starts the process of trying to get after this pawn on c4. With b6, he's thinking about the move bishop a6, he's thinking about the move knight a5, and already pressure is really quite strong on this pawn at c4. So black is really being very concrete about this position, and white now has to get his central pawns rolling. Well, the move e4 is very dangerous. I mean, it's been proven in a number of games where black has been careless that the subsequent follow-up of bishop g5 could be incredibly strong if black allows it. After that, white's threatening ideas such as knight g3 and then knight h5, taking really serious note of the fact that knight on f6 is pinned. Black has been mated many times after continuations like that, so this is why knight e8 is a good move from Leko. It's what we call a prophylactic move. Black is taking action against white's threat. He's stopping the move bishop g5. And if we think about black's plan to win this pawn on c4, then if you imagine a black knight coming to d6 at some point, that could intensify the pressure. So black is combining two things with one move. By the way, this is all theory. It's in the theory books. And the jury's still out as to whether, this is good for white or black. We really don't know yet. It's such a complicated position. Which I suppose is why both these players were playing it. They're both trying hard to win the game. Radjabov understands he's got two bishops in the mobile pawn centre. Meanwhile, black has got serious pressure, and he's probably going to win the pawn on c4. It's just a question of whether he can withstand the white attack after that. Well, Leko, of course, is a very skilled defender. He sees white getting ready to play f5, so he plays f5 himself, another blockading move, freezing the white pawn centre before it even gets going. And now white starts to lumber forward with his pawns. Well, this move has been recommended, but I must say, Radjabov isn't really showing much respect for his pawn structure when he plays such a move. I mean, after this move, really, there's no way back for white. White is committed. But perhaps white was simply afraid of that long-term surrounding of the pawn on c4, and the fact that he saw no way through for his attack. That's why a lot of grandmasters don't like this system of play with white, because there's no plan B. You set up this centre, and you somehow have to get this bishop on c1 going. If you don't do that, if you can't get the bishop on c1 going, then often that bishop can be stuck in behind the pawns. I mean, there are three pawns here which are obstructing the bishop's progress. And the bishop never gets into the game. It becomes a useless piece the longer the game goes on. So white figures, okay, I've got to attack in this position. Well, now Leko makes a very interesting decision. He dissolves the double pawns. Not many people would do that, but he's done it for a reason. He sees very clearly that he can continue in this position and continue to press against white's pawns. For instance, after knight d6, the queen must move. And now, just when white was threatening c4, when all his difficulties in this position would be over, black goes and plays the move knight a5. This is an absolutely necessary follow-up to what black played over the last few moves. And it stops white from playing c4. Whilst white can't play c4, then the pawn on d5 is isolated from the rest of his brothers. Moreover, the bishop on c1 is still struggling to get into the game. So we see the decisions made in the opening are carrying over into this complicated middle game. White still has the same problems. Can he get his bishop into the game? Can he repair the defects in his pawn structure? Well, the subsequent course of play would suggest that he cannot. As Leko continues to play extremely well, again a freezing move, just stopping this pawn from coming into the game with a move like f6. White might have been threatening to sacrifice the pawn. Moreover, black is now putting direct pressure on this pawn at f5. White goes rook b1, I suppose, because he wants to get out of the pin of the pawn on the c3, but it looks a most uncomfortable move. Black is much better coordinated in this position. I'll be talking a little bit about coordination in the next take, actually. White plays knight g3. Now a very clever move by Leko, knight b3. Again, a move which I'm sure was very unexpected. Clearly, white is intending to go knight h5 in this position. And who knows, after that, maybe he can push this pawn up to f6, sacrifice it, get after the black king. But black now intercepts that move with a really clever idea, knight b3. Because of the intermediary idea of knight takes c1, white hasn't really got time to realise his plans. Obviously, if rook takes b3 in this position, then black has the killing fork, c4. So Radjabov goes queen f3, and now another paradoxical move by Leko. Knight takes c1. You see, top players, especially grandmasters, are very unstereotyped. They know, I mean he knows, Leko, that this knight is potentially a much better piece than the bishop. But the fact is, the bishop's threatening to come into the game now. It could be a dangerous piece. And knight takes c1 has the concrete idea of winning a pawn with rook e5. So Leko just goes for it. He sees that white can't really defend this pawn on f5 now, which is attacked 4 times. Radjabov tries his best to create tactical complications by playing knight e4, but Leko is right on top of his game here. The more white tries to create complications, and d6 of course is now another little trick. If knight takes d6 in this position, then white would take on f1 twice, and then take on d6, winning a piece. So that's completely out of the question. But back to the game now, just queen e8, holding everything. I'm sure Leko saw this position before he went knight takes f5, and concluded that after knight h6, he was just winning this endgame. And indeed, there doesn't seem to be any real way for white to avoid exchanges. After which, of course, his weakened pawn structure is now going to be the telling factor in the position. Well, all the pieces come off. White's knight is under attack, must move. Black gets out of the pin. White plays a miserable move, rook d1. Now it's black who hits white on the rebound, pinning the knight on d2. Out of the pin he goes, king d8, and that was the last move of the game. And at this level, that's quite in order. Of course, what we see now is that black is forking the knight on d2 and the pawn on d6. Unless white doesn't want to go just 2 pawns down for nothing, he's probably got to surrender himself to a move like rook e7, but even then, knight takes d6 and he still finds that he's 2 pawns down for nothing. So that was a game where decisions made in the opening influenced the whole game. My general tip then is to please consider your pawn structure. If you've got defects in your pawn structure, isolated pawns, double pawns, triple pawns, somehow you've got to have compensation for them. Okay, Radjabov argued in this game, he had the mobile centre, he had the bishop, but he was never able to get that going due to Leko's supreme technique. Meanwhile, if you're able to mess up your opponent's pawn structure at an early stage or any stage of the game, then why not feel free to do so? It can be a game-long defect which the opponent can't get rid of, and that will help you